E360 TV proudly presents messages of inspirational stories. Live streaming now to millions of devices, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, with your host, Donna Guimwa, producer and host, Jim Grant, producer and host, along with Michaela Vidal, administrator and host, and Gaia Guimwa Balconi Wada, editor-in-chief.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Messages of Inspirational Stories. Jim, it is another awesome day of famous people who inspire not only us, but our kids.
Absolutely. And you might notice Donna's so happy to get going that she just gets the giggles right before we go live. I mean, it just amazes me how that happens every single time.
Right.
But
well,
yes.
That wouldn't be your fault, Jim.
No. On my word as a gentleman, But we're going to be talking about some, a few of the inventions that just everyday people, they saw a need, they rose to the occasion.
Had an idea.
Yeah, they saw a need, had an idea, and I can't wait to talk about this one. And it's going to be really inspiring. It's really shocking, I think, for such a simple little, invention.
Right.
But before we get going, today is Thursday, June the 16th. And oh my goodness, on this particular day, Donna, one of the things that's national today is Fresh Veggies Day.
Yum.
Yes, ma'am. That's so important for us to get fresh veggies because vegetables are very, very important to us. They have oxalic acid in them. Oxalic acid is one of the, it's actually a little poison really, but it's in their food to fight abnormal cells. And it's a great thing. And I mean, I love vegetables. I really do.
Too.
I do
too.
Yeah, because Elf makes these salads and she puts cilantro in there. I know a lot of people don't like cilantro, but I do. That's because I'm weird. And she'll put in apples and walnuts. I am a nut, obviously, because I love walnuts. My goodness gracious, I can chomp on those things just like putting a feed bag around an old mule, I mean, I just really, really love those things. They're fantastic. And today is also a day for National Career Nurse Assistance Day. This is an appreciation for all the people who work as a nurse assistant.
Absolutely.
And my goodness gracious. And I know that probably most of us have been in a hospital, hopefully not for too long, but when you're in there, you're at the mercy of the medical staff. And it's a blessing in disguise whenever you have good nurses, because nurses and nurse assistants, they have that special heart.
They do.
They truly,
and they
truly
put up with
do.
a lot.
Yes, they do. And when I was in there for my surgery end of last year, I tried to make it a point to say thank you for coming in. And I'd make a joke out of it. Hey, thank you for coming in and checking, make sure I hadn't made the big escape yet and snuck out the window, or something like that. But oh my goodness gracious. Some of you folks, you're going to love this. Today is National Fudge Day.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
I make a great fudge at Christmas with walnuts, Jim.
Guess where we're spending Christmas this year? We're all invited to Donna's house.
Yay!
Yeah. I mean, fudge and walnuts, I mean, that's just like the cat's meow. It don't get any better than that.
Right?
It really doesn't. And also today, ladies and gentlemen, the World Sea Turtle Day. This is an awareness day that people have, wanted to bring awareness to the national sea turtles. They're beautiful animals, and it's just amazing how, we need to be mindful of the fact that certain things that people throw into the waters and things like that, how harmful it is. I've seen sea turtles get caught up with plastic and stuff like that. And
it's horrible. Fishing nets, all of,
Mm-hmm.
Just everything they get caught up in. And a lot of times they think it's food.
Yeah, yeah. They don't know the difference.
Right. So it's in their environment, and they go to nibble on it, and boom, they're trapped. And
Yeah,
we need every creature on Earth. It is our ecosystem, and it's a balance.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And you're exactly right, Donna, because when something like that is in, yeah, that we get cat approval on that, don't we?
Yeah, that was Glock.
It don't get any higher than that. When your cat approves, I mean, that's top shelf there. But a lot of the stuff is always it's colorful, so they think it is food. The color, some of the designs they see and things of that nature. So we need to be aware of that. And Donna, I just got to talk about this one lady. Oh my goodness.
Go for it, Jim.
Oh, this lady, her name is Betty Nesmith Graham. Back in 1956, she saw a need and a problem, and she invented the very first correction fluid because she worked as a typist. Now, she's also the mother of Michael Nesmith. I get my tongue going here. I started saying Michael and Nesmith at the same time, but Michael was a guitarist for a group called the Monkees back in the 60s.
I remember them well.
Oh, yeah. And she kept working on it. She started making it with her kitchen blender. And she first called the fluid Mistake Out. And she started to provide it to her co-workers with small bottles of which the brand was displayed. In 1958, she founded Mistake Out Company and continued working from her kitchen. Then she migrated to her garage, working nights and weekends to produce, more batches of the correction bottle. And she got fired from her typist job as an executive secretary at Texas Bank and Trust after she accidentally put her own company name on a sheet of employer's company letterhead. And she just simply devoted her full time to Mistake Out. Now, what's interesting about this is encouraging. She offered her correction fluid to IBM. They declined, but then they turned right around and created their own correcting Selectric, which was an integrated liftoff paper. I'm familiar with those. I think we've all seen them. But by 1968, now she started in 1956, so just 12 years later, think about this, folks. She renamed the product Liquid Paper. It was very profitable in 1979, 13 years after she got the idea, the need to fulfill this. She sold her invention to the Gillette Corporation for $47.5 million, and she gets royalties off of every single bottle that was sold.
That's not a bad time-wise investment, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, you think about that. And the reason why she did it was because she didn't do it thinking someday she's going to sell this for millions of dollars. She had no idea at that time. She was just helping typists in their hour of need to correct the problem, because the old days you had the white eraser and you tried to scrub it out.
It was messy.
It would thin out the paper, and everybody knew you made a mistake.
Or tear the paper.
Oh, yeah, I did that too. Yeah. And I remember I was telling Donna before the show, when I was in college, I took a typing course, and the person up there and the teacher, she says, Jim, what do you find is your biggest problem when you're typing? I just said an honest answer, hitting the wrong keys, and everybody laughed at me. But, I'm serious about that. That was because I was, ASD. Okay, I'm getting that coordination down. That's why I took typing, just to get my brain and my fingertips coordinated. And I'm still working on that. But I've come a long, long ways from the hammer and chisel days.
Right. And we're grateful for it.
Yeah.
So, it is really interesting to me, Jim, in how we have everyday people throughout history, and it will continue as such long after we're gone, that have an idea because something has affected their life in one way or the other. And they have that idea, and they have the wherewithal to try and put it together and come up with something. So, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and there's a meme that goes around every year, and I promise you, it doesn't get old for me because I just think it's funny. It shows a picture of heaven, and somebody's asking God, "What are you cooking?" And he says, "Phoenix." So it's supposed to hit 112 today.
Ooh.
Right. And, June is notoriously known for surging temperatures. We go from a sort of spring where it's really nice from about February till about mid-May, and then it starts creeping up, and then boom, we hit the 3 digits real quick in May.
Oh, yeah.
But when I grew up, we didn't have AC. Nobody could afford air conditioning. It was just too expensive. So the only time we really experienced air conditioning was when we went to a movie theater or went to, a restaurant, a mall, that kind of thing, go shopping. So I grew up with evap cooler. Well, so here is something that I just find amazing. Lewis Howard Latimer, September 4th, 1948 to December 11th, 1928, was an inventor and a patent draftsman. His inventions included an evaporative air conditioner. And he also improved the process for manufacturing carbon filaments for light bulbs. And, ready? There's more. And an improved toilet system for the railroad cars. In 1884, he joined the Edison Electric Light Company, where he worked as a draftsman and wrote the first book on electric lighting. The Lewis H. Latimer House, his landmark former residence, is located near the Latimer Projects at 3441 137th Street in Flushing, Queens, New York City. So, I certainly appreciate that Lewis Latimer invented the evaporative cooler, because even though it was still hot and sticky in July and August when our monsoons hit, it was a dang sight cooler in the house, even with it being a lot of moisture in here than it was outside.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at his life right here, ladies and gentlemen. And like Donna said, he was born in 1823.
1848.
48, excuse me. Yeah. And he was a black fellow. And what was really amazing about him, on February the 11th, 1918, he joined the Thomas Edison group, Edison Pioneers. And he was the first black person to join this group out of 100 people. This was the elite of the elite. And you just got to tip your hat to him, because imagine back in that time, there was still a lot of old world thinking. And that's one thing Donna and I have talked a lot about on this show when it comes to old world thinking. We need to look at a person for who they are, their character, their integrity, all that.
Absolutely.
In fact, we've said this many times before too. It doesn't matter who a person is. If it's a male, that is your brother by a different mother. And if it's a female, that's your sister by a different mother. That is the way we should look at mankind as a whole. And it's the only way it makes life worth living. Plus, you respect an individual, you show them that you love them as an individual and their integrity. And I'm sitting here on my cable trying to figure out how I got, my key Arcus on my cable. But anyway, if you see me fiddling around, that's what I'm doing, folks. But, it's just amazing how, like in the Army, the military, when I served in, they did a great job of being able to blend male, female, and the different races together. Because if you and I, if we were in the military and we're going to go see a Sergeant Porter, we just knew that Sergeant Porter would be the person of the contact that we would need to go see for a specific thing. And Sergeant Porter could take care of our particular need or the reason why we went to see him. Doesn't matter if Sergeant Porter was male, female, black, or white.
Right.
That's the right attitude. That's the attitude we have, because if we don't have that attitude, we are harming ourselves. We truly are. And that anytime you harm yourself, it just destroys your health, your happiness, your everything.
It does. It does. You know, and another interesting thing about Louis Latimer is he joined the U.S. Navy at the age of 16 in 1964. And he served on the Landsman on the USS Maciot. And after he received an honorable discharge from the U.S. Navy in 1965, he gained employment as an office boy with a patent law firm. He earned $3 a week. He learned how to use a set square, a ruler, and the other drafting tools. After his boss later recognized his talents in sketching patent drawings, he was promoted to the position of head draftsman, earning $20 a week in 1872. So that would be the equivalent to like $438.59.
Yeah, it sure would be.
So, you know, it was just an amazing thing how, you know, his parents escaped from slavery. And there was a long process with that. But, you know, it's amazing how people recognize, and this is what we're talking about, folks. People recognize people for their talent. That's it. People recognize people for who they are, nothing else. Because the outside doesn't matter. Not
at all. That's just who you are. And the thing, too, that I really like about him is that a lot of people today, especially young people, they feel like they're handicapped because maybe they don't have a good education. Maybe they don't have money. Maybe they don't have this. Maybe they don't have that. Maybe they grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. Maybe they didn't have a dad, or if he did have a dad, maybe he was not a good dad. He was more just a male figure there that just wasn't much help or whatever. Whatever that reason is, those are all stories. And this man did not even think about, well, I can't do anything. Nobody will accept me in that day and time. This is back in the mid 1800s, ladies and gentlemen. And you know, he did not let that stop him because he was focused on, this is what I can do. He was a mind with a body.
Absolutely.
That was it. And that's the attitude that you should have. And don't let anyone tell you what your gifts are, because you've got very creative gifts. You really do. Everybody's gift is different. Your gifts are different, I should say. But you were wired to be special. There's no question about that.
Well, and also in that, Jim, understanding that as we grow and we age and we mature, our gifts change. Other gifts come out, because I am a true believer that we have all these gifts inside us, but sometimes it takes a little life journey to truly find that one right gift.
Yes. There's something about going down the pathway of life, the experiences that you've overcome. Think about, you know, folks who are, you know, been around on earth 50 years or more or something like that. Think of all the obstacles they've overcome and how they can use their true life story to let young people know, 30 years younger or whatever, that, hey, this is not the end of the world. You know, you're going to have heartaches, you're going to have disappointments, you're going to strike out.
Bumps and hiccups in life.
Oh, yeah. And there's going to be times you're going to feel like you're going to quit or you can't do it.
Right.
Well, you know, just keep on keeping on. That should be the message. And you may be a person out there, because a lot of our audience is, you know, they're in the baby boom group, baby boomers age group. And yeah, you bet. We had the best music on planet Earth growing up.
And the best cars.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And where was I now? Okay, I had a flashback when I was young and good looking. Well, I was young once. I'm not making that up. But when you think about that, you know, and that the age group that we grew up in and the way we've seen the changes in the world, there's a lot of young people now. I get a kick out of watching the video of this young girl, she didn't know how to fold up a map on, well, I think the show was Ellen. And then she didn't know how to look up I think it was Golden Muffler in the Yellow Pages. She was looking for it alphabetically rather than, topic like a muffler
Right,
or,
right.
Veterinarian or something of that nature. And then gave her a dial rotary phone, the old phone.
And they didn't know how to use it.
They not a clue. And we just sat there and crack up at stuff like that. Because when we grew up, for you young folks out there, we didn't have, cell phones, obviously, that. Our cell phones can tell us who called us.
Right.
And we heard the phone ringing. We'd have to run there and get it because we don't know who's calling. And then if we didn't pick up in time, we would call the ones that we thought it might be or could have called us from numbers. And we didn't use a phone book because we had the numbers stored in our head.
Ain't that the truth? And the phones were attached to the wall. And so if you were really lucky and you had an extremely long cord, you could take it down the hall away from everybody else and have a semi-private conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But, I can remember back in the day, Jim, it was nothing for me to have 75, 80 phone numbers memorized.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was just, that's just the way it was. We trained our brain.
Right. The only numbers I have memorized is mine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because someone asked me what my number is. I go like, well, let's see. And I got to think about it because I tell them, hey, the reason why I got to think about it, I never call myself.
Right. Well, I've got my phone number memorized, but I got to be honest. I don't even have my husband's phone number memorized. Mm-hmm. Shame on me.
Mm-hmm. But, there's also a guy, he was, his name is John B. Gorrie, Gorrie. He was born October the 3rd, 1803. He passed away June 29th, 1855. He was a Nesbian-born American physician and scientist. And what's really unique about him, he is credited as being the inventor of mechanical refrigeration. Think about that. I mean, he invented something way back in those days, mechanical refrigeration. How important is that for, keeping food, from spoiling and things of that nature? Goodness gracious.
Used to be an ice box.
Yeah, exactly. And prior to that, the way they preserved meat was with salt.
Right.
Or
smoking it out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a smokehouse on our farm, and boy, I'll tell you right now, that thing would smell so good smoking those hams in there. My goodness. But it just goes to show you, whenever someone sees a need, they step up to the plate. Now, let me ask you folks out there, especially some of you younger viewers, what is some of the needs that you think, you wish somebody would, what we really need here? They need to invent something that would do this.
Right.
That would make life easier. Well, if the idea came to you, please consider that you may have the gifts to be able to put all that together. Have you thought about that?
Right.
Will you have trials and troubles, and will you stumble and fall? Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely.
That's part of the journey.
Yeah, that's part of the growing process. So don't cheat yourself and don't quit. And in 1833, this guy, John Gorrie, he moved down to Florida on the Gulf Coast, and he became a resident physician at 2 hospitals. And what's really amazing about him was that in his medical research, he involved the study of tropical diseases, including yellow fever. And at that time, the theory that bad air, malaria, caused the disease was a prevalent hypothesis. And based on this theory, he urged draining the swamps and cooling of sick rooms, and for he cool rooms with ice in a basin, suspended from the ceiling. And cool air, being heavier, flowed down across the patient and near the opening of the door. So he started, this is as basic as you could get. And that's how he started it. But he saw a need. And his cooling system was used when President James A. Garfield was dying in 1881. The naval engineers built a box filled with cloths that had been soaked with melted ice water. and then by allowing the hot air to blow over the cloths and decreasing the room temperature by 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That was quite an accomplishment in that day and time, Donna. It really was.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I want to go back to something that
Okay.
we don't, we still see it, but not as much as we did, say, 20, 30 years ago. But
Hmm.
how about this one?
Okay.
Johannes Gutenberg
Mm.
was a German inventor of the printing press,
Oh, yeah.
right? So now this is crazy. He was born 1400 to 1468 was his lifespan. And he was a blacksmith and an inventor who developed the first world's mechanical, movable type printing press. Regarded as a milestone in modern human history,
Oh,
the
yeah.
printing press played a key role in the advancement of the Renaissance, the Age of Enlightenment. Just it goes right on down, making knowledge contained in books and literature affordable and readily available. For the first time, Gutenberg's press was used to create one of the Western world's first and most famous books, the Gutenberg Bible, also known as 42-line Bible.
That's really amazing, because before he invented the press, the printing press, how did people learn back in those days before that?
We were told. It
Yeah.
was passed down generationally
Yeah.
by teaching and by telling the stories. That's what storytellers were.
Exactly. And they taught parables.
Mhm.
When Jesus was on earth, that's what he taught, was parables. And parables are a story that other people can relate to. And that's how history was passed down, family history, stories about grandma, grandpa, all that. And of course, with the printing press, that just blew the whole world. That was the World Wide Web of that day, you might say.
Right. And look how it, from 1400 onward, look how much that invention has helped us go forward.
Oh my goodness. Think of all the authors who become best-selling authors and things like that. If it wasn't for the printing press, it wouldn't have happened.
Right. Well, that invention went on to help invent the typewriter, right? Which went on to help invent the computer. So let's, when you look at this and really look at it from the perspective of that invention opened the doors for so much that we use every single day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And there was I'm going to go on memory here. In fact, let me, I'll look this up in just a moment. Hedy Lamarr. She was a beautiful Hollywood actress. Her and her husband, you want to say, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, she was incredible in the age. She was absolutely just gorgeous beyond.
Oh,
but
yeah.
people misunderstood her.
Oh, yeah. They didn't think beauty and brains was a combination. She had the beauty, but she had a whole bucket full of brains.
Absolutely.
Because she was watching her child play the piano. And that spurned a thought in her mind. And her invention of a frequency hopping, I'll call it like that, because that's what I knew in the military with the frequency hopping. It was a radio that came out in the 80s. We knew it SINGARS, which is an acronym for Single Channel Ground Airborne Radio System. And this thing would hop frequencies. I'm not going to say how many times a second, but it was so fast the enemy could not get it, because before, with the old systems, they could put out a frequency band bomber there, and they could actually jam the signal. But with the frequency hopper, they couldn't. She tried to explain it to the Navy. And guess what? It was over their heads. So they figured it was too complicated to work. But actually, they grasped the idea, and her invention was originally used in the Day of Pigs in Cuba in 1962.
Right.
And then it migrated on. You say, well, Jim, that's a nice little story, but what does that do with us today? It was because of her invention that we have cell phones.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
And I'm pulling it all off from memory because I used to teach that course many years ago. But Hedy Lamarr was extremely intelligent. And you can just imagine how frustrated she was trying to talk to a bunch of bozo men. And it's like trying to explain algebra to a bunch of monkeys.
Well, and back in that day, men, all due respect, but men still felt that women weren't smart, that women, had their place.
Mm-hmm.
And so that they didn't, unfortunately, we've all heard it, the old boys club. And they felt that, well, there's no way that a woman could be smart enough to figure this out.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. She was not in their league. She was up here.
Oh, yeah.
She was in college and they're in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
That's about the size of it, ladies and gentlemen, because I did a study on that many years ago and I remembered that. And I'm just pulling this off the top of my head, but the facts are true. That's
Right.
exactly what happened. And her invention was just, think about it. If it wasn't for her invention, we wouldn't have the cell phones, because one of the glitches in her system was that this is how advanced she was. Back in those days when she came out with it, it was the old vacuum tube and the analogs.
Right.
And so it had a little bit of a problem being able to perform because it preferred what the system was designed to do that she came up with would require digital, not analog, and transistor and not tubes, not vacuum tubes. Now, for you young folks, the vacuum tubes was you cut on get in your car and you go down the road, you crank it up and you turn on the radio, and it probably take about a minute or so for it to heat up the vacuum tubes.
It's
and
kind of a little light bulb kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And when those tubes would light up and it start working in harmony and pull in the signal, and everybody reach up there to cut down the radio because we had it too loud, But that would give you an idea of how advanced she was in her thinking.
Right.
And, we got to tip our hat to people like that, because her and her husband were just brilliant. And bless her heart, she did patent it, but the military, I got to tell the story out of school, the federal government waited until the 7 years was up before they adopted her patent, and then therefore they could circumvent paying her royalties.
Right, which was so wrong. So wrong.
Oh, yeah, because, ladies and gentlemen, there's a moral to that story too, and that is you don't ever cheat somebody out of what's rightfully theirs, because that will always come back 100% of the time and snake bite you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to talk about another gentleman that so fascinating. And I love the fact that, we grew up with this, but we didn't know when things really first happened, right? Mm-hmm. It's not something that, most of us sit down and go into our computer and hit Google search and say, okay, such and such. So this is so cool. Thomas Jennings, 1791 to 1856. Mm-hmm. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
So at the time when most Black men in the United States were slaves, Jennings was born free in New York, New York City. He was the first African-American to hold a patent for a process known as dry scouring. Today, we call it dry cleaning. How about that?
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is just off the charts with learning this stuff. So it goes on here to say that well, no, it took me to something else. I apologize.
While you're looking that up, I mean, can you imagine when he came up with the idea of dry cleaning clothes, what was some of the old sticks in the mud, some of the old world thinking would say, well,
Right.
we've always washed clothes. I don't see
Right.
anybody can clean a shirt, or dress or whatever, dry cleaning. That didn't make any sense to me. And
He patented it in 1821, Jim.
that guy, these are people you got to tip your hat to, because there's tremendous stories in there for our young people to say, hey, these people, because he was a black gentleman, he went against the grain. There's no question about that. This is before the Civil War. This is before slaves were freed. This was at a time when, if a lot of white people at that time, hate to say it, but it's true, if they didn't think black people were up to their level.
Right.
They really didn't. And I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm just saying that was
the mentality.
Yes, that was the stupid mentality.
Absolutely.
And the very moment you look at anybody, regardless if they're male or female, black or white or whatever, and you think you're better than them, you've automatically, you don't know it this, but you've automatically been demoted by the universe.
Right.
That's that universal love and energy.
It's true.
Because it would just flat bypass you.
So he actually started out as an apprentice in a prominent New York tailor. And he would open what would become a large and successful clothing shop in Lower Manhattan. He secured his dry scouring patent to remove dirt and grease when he was 29 years old.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Right? So, and wool was, wool was huge back then. Right? We didn't have all the other things that we have today. So the fact that it would clean them, get the dirt and the grease out, but it would also keep their original shape. And that was a huge problem with woolen products because they stretch out of shape, right? So we'll never know, exactly what the scouring method involved, but the patent is one of the so-called X patents. So I just have to say, we don't do a ton of dry cleaning here, but let me tell you, there are certain things you do have to dry clean.
Oh, yeah.
I've got my living room curtains. Those are dry clean. I've got all my silk. I dry clean, right? Whether it's raw or, raw silk or the polished silk, I get all of that dry cleaned. Thank you so much for your incredible invention.
Oh, yeah, because he definitely saw a need. And he, it just amazes me. How does he come up with that? He had that gift because he saw a need. And when he saw the need, he recognized that it might be up to him to solve that problem. And he did. So in life, whether you're 25 or 65 or whatever, it doesn't matter. You are a mind with a body. If you see a need, chances are you've got the gift inside of you to be able to solve that need. And just look out, look what a blessing dry cleaning is. What a blessing, especially the fabrics that you cannot wash traditionally.
Right.
Like you say, wool. I've got a cashmere sweater, and I wear it, sometimes in the wintertime or in the fall of the year. But, I keep that thing dry cleaned and all that because, otherwise it would burn it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, that is just amazing to go back that far. And he was only 29. Wow.
One of the people that I've always admired, and this is a person that you should teach your kids about, is Nikola Tesla. Born in 1856, he died in 1943. An absolutely brilliant mind. And he was, I've read up on his life story, and I'm just going to talk about it, shooting from the hip, if I may. But he was backed by some big money. But what they did not see, this is where the wheels came off the cart with some of this old world thinking. Because he was talking about free electricity being pulled out of the air.
Right.
And he was making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought, the investors thought that, hey, if he's giving away for free, we can't make any money.
Right.
They didn't even think 2 seconds ahead about, look at all the electrical appliances we have in our house.
Mm-hmm.
Refrigerators, blenders, chargers for our cell phones.
Coffee pots.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's important.
That's almost number one.
Yeah. It is at my house anyway. That's the first thing I turn on in the morning. Was second
Me
thing.
too.
First time's the light. Second thing's the coffee pot because
Well,
I get up.
ours turns on automatically. We set it up to be already brewed by the time we get up.
Mm-hmm. I don't do that because sometimes I'll get up at 4:30. And I just like cutting it on because while it's brewing, I'll be drinking my first glass of water.
There you go.
And because water is good for you. This is a little bit off topic here, but I'm not going to charge you folks any extra for this. No, but I'm serious because at nighttime you fast. And if you want to lose weight, one of the most highly recommended things you can do is drink a glass of water in the morning to get your body flowing again, because that's why they call breakfast break fast. And because you're breaking the fast from the night before. And, but while that's doing that, I drink my water and then, oh boy, now I can enjoy my coffee because I've treated my body. Now I'm going to treat myself,
Right.
And where were we anyway? Before I went
We're talking about Tesla.
Oh, okay. Nicholas. But it was amazing how the inventions he came up with and all of the things that he did that were, he was on a different planet than the rest.
He was orbiting on a different level than anybody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Much higher frequency.
Yeah. And because he he was, some of them viewed him as a threat to their.
Oh yeah.
He was viewed as a threat. I mean, the big investor, I don't want to mention his name, but he tried to destroy his credibility, saying he's a nutcase, he's this, he's that. So no one would listen to him because he wanted the money for the electricity. He didn't want it to be free. But again, he did not think about this. If he'd have got with him and says, hey, what can we run with this electricity? How can we improve life? I mean, fans and, all these things. Goodness gracious. Oh, it's just so pathetic. Right. And look what Elon Musk did with the Tesla car. I mean,
exactly.
They couldn't have picked a more perfect name than Tesla. And the gentleman was just brilliant. So I encourage you, we don't have enough time to go into more detail because we're going to cover a couple more people, but I encourage you, for you folks that have kids that are scientific minded, they have a knack for that, to study his life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how to say he thought outside the box. The box didn't even exist.
Right.
It didn't even exist.
Well, and here's another gentleman that would be good to study up on. For those of you who have children, over the summer who maybe get bored, or if you're like me, when my children had summer break, they still did summer school. So we did a little bit of stuff during a couple days a week so they wouldn't, lose all the ground that they gained during the school year. How about this one? Samuel Morse, 1792 to 1872. So yet another artist turned inventor. Morse is best known for developing the electric telegraph, which allowed people to communicate over long distances nearly instantaneously. He was, of course, the developer of the Morse code, a system of dots and dashes used to send these messages. You talk about such an invention. Wow. I mean, this just was changed everything as we know today, that we could actually communicate. And of course, I personally don't know how to do Morse code, but he was his parents sent him to Yale College, now Yale University, and although he was an indifferent scholar, his interest was aroused on lectures on the then little understood subject of electricity.
Mm.
Look what he did with it.
Mm.
Okay. So, to the distress of his parents, he also enjoyed painting miniature portraits. Well, back in that day, you want your children to do all kinds of good things, right?
Mm.
So he graduated from Yale in 1810 and became a clerk for a book publisher. But his painting continued to be his main interest. And in 1811, his parents helped him go to England in order to study that art with an American painter, Washington Allston. During the War of 1812, between Great Britain and the United States, Morris reacted to the English contempt for Americans by becoming passionately pro-American. Like the majority of Americans of his time, he accepted English artistic standards, including the historical style of painting, right? So this goes on about that. When he returned home in 1815, he found that Americans did not appreciate his historical canvases. So he reluctantly took up portraits to earn a living. So he went on, I'm trying to read as I talk, folks. So he went on later to discover and go into his passion, which was electricity. And look where we would be or where we wouldn't be without that invention, Jim.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because the alphabet A through Z had a specific, like A had a dot and a dash, which means beep, beep, a longer one. And, you hear the Morse code and all that. And of course, digits 1 through 0,
Right.
not 0 through 9, but 1 through 0. That was the way he set it up. Now, even in the Army back in the 60s, they still had soldiers trained in Morse code because originally people would just listen to the kind of like try to listen to it and all that. I mean, telegraphs, you see movies of the Old West, and the guys, the telegraph office, he's writing down the message that the dots and the dashes and all that stuff. And it, like you, Donna, I cannot read it, but I knew a guy who was very proficient in it. And it takes when you're trained in that, it simply just lights up one portion of your brain.
Right.
Because everything else is kind of like pushed aside. Your focal point is on those dots and dashes. And, think about that.
Right.
With the dots and the dashes and all that, and you got 26 letters and 10 digits.
Right. Amazing.
I see now why I was never invited to go to Morse code school.
Well, this was interesting. He said he, along with his partners, persevered into promoting the telegraph. And in 1843, he was finally able to obtain financial support from Congress for the first telegraph line in the United States, from Baltimore to Washington. In 1844, the line was completed. And on May 24th, he sent the first message. What hath God wrought? What hath God wrought? He was immediately involved in legal claims by his partners and rival inventors. I mean, it just goes on, and it's quite the amazing story.
Absolutely. And that's what migrated us being able to text one another today.
Right?
Think about that. This was an old analog system, but it got converted up and upgraded to the digital system, but the principle is the same. What's the old computer programs are? They're made up of ones and zeros, right? Which is the dots and the dashes from the old analog system. Think about that. That's how all that came into play, ladies and gentlemen. And so far, Donna, we've covered quite a bit on people who have,
impacted our lives globally. And that is the most amazing gift. And we all owe them a thank you.
Yeah. Now, let's take this one step further. And Donna and I have not talked about this, so we're going to freelance this, which we always do on our show. We follow the energy. But think about that time. The universe delivered certain people with certain gifts to meet certain needs for society, for the betterment of life. Because the universe with love and abundance wants us to have a good life.
Right.
That's it. That's why there's medicine's been invented. Penicillin was invented, right before. I don't remember the year penicillin was invented, but I do know this. It was very instrumental in my life when I suffered from double pneumonia when I was 10 years of age. My parents credit that, and the doctors do too, for, I won't say saving my life, but definitely getting me out of the woods. So you have double pneumonia and you got a high temperature, that can be dangerous for a kid.
Right.
It sure can be. But think about now, in this day and time, everybody on planet Earth, there's certain people out there that have certain gifts and talents. And the universe, with its abundance and love, that hasn't changed.
No.
So ask yourself this question. Why were you born on the day, the month, year, and day that you were born, as opposed to 100 years ago?
Right.
You would have had different gifts back then than you have today, because the needs today are different than they were 100 years ago.
Just like they will be in 100 years from now.
Yeah. And it's just amazing, because this is the type of stories of how people, because we've said this before, Donna, and correct me if I slaughter this, but education is not teaching someone what to think, but education should be inspiring to teach them how to think. Yeah. I think I did that right, didn't I?
I think so. I mean, we all need to learn the basics, and that's the part of it. But if we don't learn the how, none of the rest of it makes any sense.
That's right. It's kind of like the old joke, you heard about the guy who was, I forget what the degree was that he had, and he came in and he says, "You mean to tell me you're charging me $150 to just make that adjustment?" It only took you, 30 seconds. He says, right. "I'm not charging you that for doing it. I'm charging you that because I knew how to do it."
Right. Exactly. That's the truth. And I have the tools in which to do it with.
That's right. Mental and physical.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Donna, our time is about gone today.
It really is. But this has been exciting. And we're going to be back tomorrow, folks. And we're going to talk some more, because I find understanding that these people who have taught us have done so much for us so long ago is so fascinating. And what can we do with it? Where can our children go from here?
I mean, they literally gave us the gift that keeps on giving.
Right?
Air conditioning will never go out of style, right?
Well, I hope not, because, and while we're on that topic real quick, I know that, as most of you know, I lived in Ohio for a long time. Go Bucks. And they are having some pretty heavy heat right now. And they are having rolling blackouts. So, and this is kind of going on everywhere. And we're really lucky here with our heat that we're not going off grid and having those rolling blackouts here in Arizona. So, our thoughts and prayers to everybody who is, going through some difficult times, and also to all of the people who have been affected in Yellowstone with the unprecedented flood. My husband and I went on our honeymoon last October to Yellowstone, and we were looking at the videos of roads that were washing out, going, we were right there. So to all the people who have been affected, who are going to continue to be affected, the people who are in the national Yellowstone National Park officials, and the people who are helping, our thoughts and prayers are with everybody.
Absolutely. And also, too, we will remember all of those that's sick and suffering, and people who have lost loved ones. You're in our thoughts and prayers, because we pray generically for, for comfort for those suffering, from those that lost loved ones and who are going through hard times and that sort of thing, because we do not know you, obviously, but that's not important. Doing the prayer and asking for that, that's what's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed the show. Please share it with others. And most importantly, be sure and love yourself first, then you can love others. And as Donna likes to say, give yourself
Grace.
amen. Don't be so hard on yourself. And when you
Absolutely.
goof up, so what? We all goof up. Learn to laugh at yourself too, because laughter is some of the best medicine you can give your body and your mind, your health, everything, and it won't cost you a dime.
Absolutely. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.
Bye-bye, folks.